I see people moving in the world with a lot of automaticity, running programs and beliefs and ideas and ways of being that are not their own.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Ameer Approved. I got my good homeboy UJ Ramdas. I'll do a quick note about UJ, a little quick bio over here for you. UJ Ramdas is a co-founder of Intelligent Change and co-creator of the world's famous 5-Minute Journal. He also is a deep master and a curious creature of the world of human habits and how human beings think. On his side time, he is a psychonaut. He likes to explore the mind and different elements of plant medicine. That's why I'm super excited for him to be on the show today. UJ, welcome, brother. I'm so happy you're here, man.
Dude, I'm excited. Also, Ameer Approved was first coined like 8 years ago.
You and Floyd, yeah.
8 years ago. Dude, it was a long time where we were like, you should get this domain. This name is really cool.
I still have it.
It's great.
I bought it that day.
I love it, right? It was a hashtag Ameer Approved. It's just such a great, like,
the phonetics, yeah.
Exactly. Such a great ring to it. It's such a great name. So I'm so glad that
Well, remember, I had a thing on Facebook. I'm like, I'm restarting my podcast.
Yeah, I remember that.
And everyone's giving me his name. Like, no offense to anybody. I'm like, looking at these names, like, yeah.
Dude, Ameer Approved is a great name.
Then I forgot about this.
How did you come back?
I don't fucking know. I think I was like, I don't know. I was walking. It's probably when I walk, you know? I was walking and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah. I'm like,
yeah, this is a solid name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep doing whatever you're doing. This is a solid name. So I'm excited for this podcast overall.
Man. So what have you been up to?
Dude, so a lot has changed actually. This month in my life is going to be a month I really look back on. You know, this span of time, September, October. So a couple of interesting things. Almost exactly a week from now, I will be a Canadian citizen.
Oh, congrats, man. Props to that.
Thank you. So by the time this goes live, I will be a Canadian citizen, which is exciting.
It was like 8 years in the making?
Dude, it's 14 years in the making.
Fuck, that's how long it takes?
Yeah. Dude,
shit.
First of all, it takes way less time, typically. But here's the thing with governments and policies and such. So in 2014, I could have applied to be a Canadian citizen. But the regime changed. And the laws around citizenship changed. So if you had given me a couple of more months, I would have been able to apply for citizenship, which would have meant that I would have been a Canadian citizen in 2015.
Gotcha.
However, the regime changed, laws changed, which made it take another 4 years for me to even 3 years to apply, but another 4th year to actually get it.
So what are the rules today? So if I land as a landed immigrant, how does it work?
It really depends on your the streams of immigration that you can take. So you can come on a skilled worker permit.
Yes.
And that's going to take you'll need to work in Canada for, I think, you need to have a certain amount of days in Canada, around 3 years, I believe. 3 or 4 years of stay in Canada after you're a permanent resident. So you're constantly like checking your days, logging your days. A lot of your citizenship application is around the days you've had in Canada, kind of thing. And once you have that, then you can apply to be a citizen. But there's going to be another regime change that might happen this month because the federal elections are on, right? So I'm just really excited. I'm getting my citizenship before the election.
Finally, man. God, 14 years, huh?
It's a long time. But
Shit.
So there's that, which is for those listening who aren't aware of my story, I came to Canada alone when I was 17 from India. This has been a long and beautiful journey to become a citizen and to establish myself, which brings me to the second piece of awesome news, which is I also exited from Intelligent Change, the company I built and ran with Alex, my mutual friend, over 6 years ago. So the exit and the citizenship both mark a pretty important shift in my life, and I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I love watching from the sidelines the whole process.
Yeah.
I remember when you guys first started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just sitting there and like looking at what you guys are doing to where you are now. It's fucking incredible.
So when was the first time you actually saw a 5-minute journal?
I don't know, man. You sent me like drafts. Like,
Yeah.
Like I think I even saw like PDF fucking write-ups.
Yeah.
Or not even PDF, like Adobe or whatever,
Yeah.
before even a piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. No, it's we followed a journey. That's another thing for the listeners as well. Like I've known Ameer for like almost 9+ years. Right? So we've seen each other grow and learn like a lot in the last 9 years. And it's been actually a lot of fun. I remember sending you a picture about a month ago of I think Mastermind Talks we attended in 2013.
8 years ago? No. Really?
No, it's
6?
6 years ago, I would say. Yeah, you were thinner and fitter, and
I was training like
less
a
hair.
fucking maniac.
Yeah, you were.
And I was pretty much bicking my head. That's good when I go bald. I'm used to it already. It's no change for me.
Yeah, man, it was a good time.
Actually, somebody asked me why I wear a hat. I'm like, I'm just too lazy to fucking do my hair. I go to the gym right before this. You know what I mean? Like, I even take it off. It's like, I'm just lazy. You know, super fucking lazy.
Dude, hat is a great situation. If you're lazy and you don't want to do your hair, but also for sun. It's like, it's such a versatile piece of fucking accessory. It's awesome. I'm a huge fan. Recently got converted to hats. But I'm like, what's the benefit? I'm like, oh shit, there's a lot of benefit.
A lot of benefits.
It's a lot of benefit. That was really cool. So yeah.
So where do you think the journey is going to lead you next, man? You have the exit now. Are you focusing on anything?
Yeah. So I have a few friends and mentors who have also had exits, and so I'm a huge believer that when you're in a situation that you're unsure of how to navigate. Like, someone has been in this position before, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you know people or you can get access to podcasts or interviews or books of other people who have been in a similar situation, talk to them. Ask them. I'm a huge fan of, like, not making mistakes other people have made and learning from other people's mistakes so you don't make the same thing.
Yeah, it was a smart man learns from his mistakes, a wise man learns from others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have time to be smart. I prefer to be wise. So one of the consistent things that I'm hearing from other entrepreneurs who've exited is like, don't make any major professional moves in the next 6 months to a year. Like, chill. Like, you've earned it. You've done great. Take the time you need to be able to navigate and figure out what your next move can be and should be. The rules of the game are different now from that when you started a company, right? The rules of the game are different. And so learn to adapt to these new rules. It's going to take time for your mind, for your emotions, for your environment to acclimatize, to recalibrate to what's happening. And so I think a way that I want to spend my time is reading. I really enjoy reading. I just took this weekend away to a cottage and took some amazing hikes. Things that will nourish my being. Things that will inspire me. I've recently been watching Inside Bill's Mind.
Pretty good docuseries.
Really cool.
Yeah.
On Netflix. Very inspiring as well, right? To see. So Bill Gates essentially is a 3-part documentary, about 3 hours total, and talks about Bill and his philanthropic efforts. And it's really interesting to see a guy who's, was at least, one of the richest men in the world, and then how he's deploying his capital to make the world a better place and the challenges he's facing and things like that. It's inspiring. That's cool. So for me, I'm thinking about what am I inspired by? And how do I spend my time intelligently when I don't have to do anything I don't want to do?
Yeah.
And I have a sense of it, but I don't have all the answers yet.
Well, Bill Gates takes a week off.
Right.
And something he does that's intriguing to me, which I've done naturally, was he doesn't read electronics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does physical.
Right. He carries bags and boxes of books, so everywhere he goes. And so he takes this week off and he has boxes of books and magazines or newspapers or research papers and pen and paper, just reads.
Yeah, he calls it the Think Week.
Yes.
And it's actually something that I've really loved. I'm like, this is great. He goes alone, gets a cabin in the woods.
Yeah, it's alone, yeah.
Takes a huge stack of books and papers and just goes ham and reads. And I thought that was genius. And he's been doing it for a long time. He's been doing it for over 20 years at this point. So stuff like that, right? Like learning from rereading old books that I've really enjoyed is really, really interesting, because when you read a book that you really love, when you finish it, I feel like you've only really learned the first layer of what that book has to teach you. If it's a really good book. And then when you read it again, you go a layer deeper. And at a certain point, if you read it enough times, you feel like you have absorbed the depth of the wisdom that book has to offer you. And at a certain point, sometimes you get to this place with a book. A lot of the times I haven't. You feel like you've lived the book. You have absorbed everything that book has to offer you. You can't really say that unless you've read it at least 2 or 3 times. It's a good book. And that's what I'm planning to do, is to revisit books that I've really enjoyed.
What are some books you've enjoyed?
There's a book called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse that I review pretty much.
It's a classic.
That's a classic. Like every 6 months at least, I'll try to go through that once. And I have such a powerful reaction to the book, because it is a story of a young boy's search for truth, and I consider myself a seeker of truth. And so the resonance with that book is very strong. There's another book called What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro.
Okay.
It's a really, really great book. It's basically an FBI lead investigator, right? And his field-tested approach on how to read body language. I think understanding people and understanding other people's thinking is one of the most valuable things. Developing empathy, most valuable things we can do as humans. We have to deal with a lot of them. If we don't understand them, life is going to be very challenging, right? And so to deepen your understanding of thinking, to deepen your understanding of other people, how they're interacting with life, how they're responding to you, how they're moving through life. There's a lot of things they don't say, right? So most people's communication is not explicit. We're talking in words. This is explicit, but most of communication is implicit. And learning to understand deeply implicit communication is going to make life so much more straightforward. There's a book called Nonviolent Communication.
Oh, yeah. What was his name?
Marshall Rosenberg.
Yeah, he just passed away a couple of years ago. Yeah. I love watching his puppets on
Exactly.
YouTube. Yeah.
So the book is okay, but the videos on YouTube are dope.
As a presenter and an auditor, he's phenomenal.
Great. Great. Yeah, the book is not great. Also, I'm not a fan of the word nonviolent communication. It's like calling cuddling like non-consensual touching or something, or consensual, like, you know, it's not accurate.
Yeah, I think everybody should look at his work.
Exactly.
Like it's very powerful.
It's powerful because it helps people communicate effectively. It helps reduce friction and reduce emotional charge between people. So you can actually focus on working together to get something done. If you're holding resentment, or if you're not able to communicate freely to someone about something that's going on, you're going to be thinking about, like, you're going to be holding that inside you, and it's going to lead to your energy being sucked up in that as opposed to productive work. So that's important and that's valuable. There's a lot, man. I'm rereading fiction. Ender's Game.
Oh, Ender's Game, yeah.
By Orson Scott.
You know what I reread not too long ago was Shantaram.
Oh my god,
such a good book. Holy, the Audible is fucking awesome.
Yeah, actually, I haven't read the Audible yet, but the
production in Audible is like legit, like all out.
I've heard good things about it. Next time I read that book, I might just do that. It's a very long book for anybody listening, and if you buy the book or the audiobook, the size will intimidate you at first. But just like any good book, when you get into it, like my bar for any fiction is if I get to 100 pages and I don't get into the story, I can let it go, right? That's my general like bar. By the time you get to page 100, you'll get sucked in, and then you don't want it to end. You don't want it to end because it is so beautifully written, and it is like a near biographical tale of the author, which is why he's able to go into such beauty and such like precise language and such a beautiful way of telling a story of a man who's been through a lot, who's seen a lot of lifetimes of craziness in the mafia in Bombay, etc. Right, so that's quite wonderful. There's a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which is pretty good. It's about creativity, and it's about learning to kind of tap into your version of it, which is really awesome. Yeah, I basically have a stack of books on my coffee table, and I'll like lean into one and I'll pull that out and I'll start to read it as long as I feel inspired to dive into that. And books are such a treasure, man, because I mark all my books up with pen. And so I can look back at the last time I went through this book and see what I liked, what I didn't like. If I don't agree with something, I'll just cross it off in the book. And it almost is a way for me to connect with myself when I read the book for the first time, because I've grown and learned since. And so I can start to see my thinking patterns when I read it maybe the first time years ago, and on and on. And so I'm excited, man. I'm excited for this, a beautiful chunk of time for me to reconnect with myself in a way I might have never reconnected with myself. And exciting.
Let me ask you this. So, obviously you created the 5-minute journal to help people. I want to say, psychologically is one aspect. The whole point, if people aren't familiar with it, it's focuses on being humble and humility and gratitude. It's very simple exercises, write down 3 things that you're grateful for in the morning, in the evening, etc. There's some iterations to that. But that's it in a nutshell. In your mind, is what's the science behind this the gratitude, or like how do people benefit from more gratitude?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for context, this is the 5-minute journal. We've sold over 500,000 copies of this thing, and we've also we've had a lot of really amazing people get behind it, us like Tim Ferriss, Mac Rayfield, etc. The research behind gratitude came from this movement called positive psychology. The idea is a revolutionary idea at the time, which was, if you take a look at all the papers published, I think this was in the 90s, all the psychology papers published, more than 80% of the papers focused on how do we fix depression, how do we fix anxiety, how do we fix something that is not working. And and there was less than 20% that was focusing on, hey, here are these people that are doing great work, but they're quite well psychologically. How do we look at how do we improve their life? How do we learn from what they are doing? And so Martin Seligman, who is known as the father of positive psychology, started to ask the question, how about we start to do research on the positive emotions, on the things that actually help people that become better, as opposed to be not anxious and be not depressed. And so gratitude is the emotion that comes up over and over and over again in this research. The writing down of 3 things you're grateful for fundamentally improves your baseline of happiness, improves your pro-social behavior, which is a fancy way of saying it makes people more Canadian. Right? Right? Fancy way of saying, like, you help people more, you hold open doors, you say thank you, you are nice. And the benefits of that niceness isn't just for other people. You feel better as a result, because our brain is wired for fear. Right? Our brain is wired for survival, which is another way of saying, really, our brain is wired for fear. So it's not wired for happiness. It's not wired for well-being. It's not wired for feeling amazing. It's wired for survival and wired for reproduction. So those 2 things on a raw machine level, they're optimized. So but your brain is a malleable thing. As we know from research, your brain can change, can make new connections. It takes time, it takes practice, but it's absolutely possible. Then how do you do that? And how do you wire your brain for happiness? Well, everybody has to do it for themselves. I can't do it for you. But the wiring of your brain for happiness is the practice of gratitude, is the practice of looking at what's good around you so you can start to train your mind in times of stress to be resilient enough to see what's good out there. Because when stimulus happens and you feel stress, your body is under tension. Your body goes into freeze, fight. Freeze, flight, or fight. That's the order, right? People say fight or flight. That's not usually it. People usually freeze. And animals too, mammals, right? Freeze is the first response. And then they'll flee as the first response. A second response. If they have to fight. They can avoid fighting.
They'll run.
Yeah. If they can't avoid fighting, then they'll fight as a last resort.
Yeah.
Because then now real damage is going to happen one way or the other, right? If they win or not, it's going to be some damage. And their body needs to avoid that to survive and to replicate. But assuming survival and replication is a given, which is what is true in our society, how do you be happy? Shit, you got to train that. Because your system doesn't come in built for that. And that the sooner you have the training and the more training you have, the more resilient and your well-being will be. And that is what the Feynman Journal does. It is essentially a toothbrush for your mind. It's something you do morning and night, something you do to keep your mind resilient, keep you buoyant, keep you looking at what's good.
Talking about the toothbrush for the mind, right now in our current landscape, politically, things are heating up.
Sure.
There's
That's
a lot.
One way of saying it.
Yes. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance. There's a lot of, say, people not really using rationale or logic on both sides. This applies to everybody.
It's just a joke, man.
Yeah. Well, social. There's that. I always mention the saying. It's the minute I read it, it stuck to me like glue. It's Owen E. Wilson, the biologist. We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technologies. We're still fucking apes, and people really forget that. We put ourselves on this like grandiose pedestal. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you're no different than your ancestor like 500,000 years ago.
Yeah,
you know?
That's very, very similar.
Very similar.
99.85 or something %.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so what I'm curious about, you just mentioned toothbrush for your mind. One way of helping your psychological homeostatic levels is gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's gratitude as just saying thank you verbally or using a journal to write down, or about being, having gratitude equals humility, being humble, etc. Are there certain things people can do today to counteract what the fuck's happening in the world? Like, I think people underestimate the psychological pressures the social media brings onto them.
Absolutely. No question. There's a lot, man. So I'm a fan of the quote. I think it's a Gandhi quote, which is, if you want to change the world, start with yourself.
Yeah, there's a Rumi quote too. Yesterday I was clever. I want to change the world. Today I'm wise. I want to change myself.
Exactly. Yeah. So that I start with that.
Mm-hmm.
That is the basis of my thinking, and then I start to go, can I improve the quality of my ability to feel deep peace? Right. So there is a state that we have when not just there is contentment, but there is a deep state of thoughtlessness, a deep state of inward repose that can only be found, for me, in deep meditation. You might be able to find it in a float tank. You might have a really great spar session if you're an athlete or a BJJ competitor. Whatever your way of finding that flow is, I'm a huge fan of doing that. right? So I know one of the ways you find flow is by lifting, right? So by competing in martial arts, by lifting, like these are things that really like running, walking, right? These are the ways you find flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think finding flow is beautiful and amazing and very valuable for anyone listening to engage in, so they can. And flow is an experience of losing the concept of time, feeling like you are fully engaged with the activity on hand.
Which was made popular by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
I call it Chick Sent Me High.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Chick Sent Me High is how I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a great book called Flow, also made popular in the book
Stealing Fire?
Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler and Jimmy Wheel. Right? Great books overall, and great ideas of finding that thing that allows you to explore and feel like you're fully expressed. That's important. Another one is obviously the practice of gratitude journaling, but journaling by itself improves your ability to interface with your emotions and your thoughts. Right? So we have two brains. You have system 1 and system 2 as you would have it in Thinking Fast and Slow. The idea is you have a thinking brain and you have a feeling brain. The thinking brain and the feeling brain sometimes operate independent of each other, but they're both intelligence, a way of sifting through information. If the thinking brain acts independent of the feeling brain, you are acting without all of the information that you need. For example, if you can't accurately predict how you will feel when you go see your friends for dinner, or you buy a car, or you buy a drink, you can't accurately predict the state you will feel when you do that. You can't make accurate decisions based on what you want. So journaling allows you, your feeling and your thinking, to almost talk to each other. How am I feeling right now? How am I really feeling?
This is similar like Jonathan Haidt's like Elephant in the Rider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you connect with your subconscious. You connect with the part of you that is kind of under the surface. So you can learn to work with that part of you to be a better
So how does one
performer.
approach journaling?
I think a good first of all, a good
Because
thing.
you and I talked about this before.
Yeah. So I've been journaling for a long time. And
You're a prolific journaler.
Yes. And I have a journal open in front of me right now. I typically have that because to me, journaling is a way to interface with life, is a way to amplify the input that I'm getting, understand what is happening, and digest the wisdom. Digesting wisdom is a skill set. We've talked about this as well, right? If I'm able to see an insight and pull an insight, to be able to convert that into how my life changes on Tuesday at 4 p.m., I have to process that insight properly and effectively to the point where I am able to modify my behavior based on the insight that I've received. And that's a tall order for someone who doesn't understand how to sift through an insight and break it into pieces and start to say, okay, then this means then I need to do this. This means like this aspect of my behavior changes. So how do you do that? The first thing is you start to practice putting your pen to paper when you're feeling a bit funky, right? If you're having trouble with a decision, if you are looking to get more clarity on something, you put pen to paper. And the first question I always like to start with is, how am I feeling right now? Feeling is a very good, accurate indicator of your general state and also your desired state. So if you're feeling confused and you want to feel clear, okay, you have a sense of where you want to go, you have a sense of where you are, and strategy, essentially, is the art of getting what you want with what you got. And so once you have the two pieces, what you want very clear and where you're at, then you can start to map how to get there. So how am I feeling? And really asking yourself, why am I feeling that way? And then I like to ask the question, both in a journal and outside to people, what's going on? Or if I feel like the need to be aggressive, I'll ask, what the fuck is going on? Because asking that question allows you to get the information you need to make decisions that matter. A lot of the time I see people moving in the world with a lot of automaticity, running programs and beliefs and ideas and ways of being that are not their own. They've been acquired by society, by peers, through friends, through parents, whatever. They are not their own. And typically when there has not been a lot of critical thinking, where there hasn't been a lot of thinking about, wait, does this person know what they're talking about? Right. Yesterday I saw, for the first time, I didn't see this before, on a pizza sign. It says Canada's #1 pizza. What? What? Who determines that?
Yeah.
And how, like, what gives them the authority to
like
say that?
TTC said they're the best. So you see that? I'm like, who? Well, are you guys the judges yourself? You guys are fucking worst.
Who's doing this, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The reason they're able to put it out there is there are not enough people like you and I asking that question and making fun.
So you're saying you think most people aren't skeptical?
No. No, I know most people aren't skeptical because of the authority bias, right? We have numbers on the authority bias. A majority of humans will not question something said authoritatively.
Yeah.
Will not question that. The act of journaling allows your critical mind to become stronger, to ask those questions.
Do you think there's like a heuristic that we can build or is out there already where it's kind of a checklist of cognitive biases one can ask?
There is.
Okay.
There are lists of cognitive biases.
No, I know there's lists, but I'm saying like within like a very simple checklist. Because I'll tell you the problem with journaling most people have with anything in general. They're like a puppy or a dog.
Exactly. They need structure.
They need structure. Like, okay, I got my pen, I got my paper. I'm like, yeah, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and so for me, it's okay. There has to be some.
Yes.
I'm not going to guide you all the way, but there's some type of guidance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yes. I can provide this, and this is actually something I might think about in the future. Is how to help people kind of guide themselves into thinking and putting their pen to paper in an intelligent way.
Like there's a good book called The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf
Dobelli.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good book.
Great book. Yeah. Similar. It goes through all the biases, right?
There's one issue with that book or any Thinking Clearly book, whether it's like Seeking Wisdom with Peter Bevelin, or any of these books around that subject, is it's a data dump.
Yeah. For sure. I agree.
See, this is a problem because I love the book. It's small. It's nice. I get it. I've been studying this stuff forever as a hobbyist, not as a professional. And, you know, looking back in hindsight 2020, it's taken me years to figure out what type of cognitive biases affect me the most.
Exactly.
And that's just by sheer experience, knowing who I am.
Yeah.
But then you have all these cognitive biases, like the list is fucking forever. It's like, well, I'm not going to remember 50 of the cognitive biases or when to apply them. Or let's even reverse more, is like, when was I influenced by them? Mm-hmm. So like trying to simplify this data dump of like, where do I begin with all this stuff?
This is a great question. So this is the way I've attempted to go through this. Is first you pick a book. So I picked Seeking Wisdom by Peter Bevelin. And I found someone who was also as fanatical about this stuff as I was. He is now a good friend. His name is Matt Bodner. And we essentially decided to have a weekly call, or was it bi-weekly? Can't remember. We just said, like, let's go section by section, and let's look through every bias, and let's analyze, and look through our life and our experience, and see how this bias has actually affected us. And so our goal was not to finish the book. Our goal was to understand ourselves deeply. The point where I started to notice a list of biases that actually I'm like, these are my top like 5 to 10 biases that I know I am quite influenced by. The only way you can really do that is to understand the essence of a bias very deeply, and then look through your life and say, okay, where has this affected my life, if any, that I can remember or understand? Like knowing myself, like, is this bias likely to affect me?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it like, or maybe there's going to be others that are more valuable or important. You know, you go through them one by one. The point is not to go fast. The point is to understand deeply. Because if you understand it, then now I have a list of about 5 to 10 biases. And I'm like, I know I'm susceptible to them. I know that if I'm making a decision, I take a look at that list and I'm like, okay, like, am I getting influenced by any of these? If not, like, that's my 80-20 in terms of, instead of looking like the 100 plus biases which exist, right? I'd rather look at the 10 that I am most likely to get influenced by and use that almost as a tool to navigate future decisions. But that takes time. It's almost like a university course.
Oh, it's difficult. I had an idea before, and I'm open to doing this. Maybe you and I should do it.
Mm-hmm.
But the overlords of the future of your brain are the AI algo engineers for social media.
For sure.
You know, even Naval Ravikant talks about this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're not going to really escape social media. The Pandora's box has been opened.
Can, but it's tough.
I think more and more we're going to become cyborgs. I think people are opting in for the big green easy button.
This is definitely the common choice.
Yeah, listen, social media has benefits in context of who you are, what age you are, what gender you are, you know, the reasons why you're using it. You know, in Jonathan Haidt's last book, Coddling of the American Mind, he goes to show the detrimental effects for young females. You know, not so much young boys. There's a difference.
What's detrimental effect?
So the psychological makeup of young boys versus young females are different. You give a young boy social media or the internet, they gravitate to two things: porn and video games. Boys or men in general, they take their aggression out physically.
Right.
And it's not long term, it's instant.
Right.
You and I can fight today and tomorrow might be friends.
Right.
Women, on the other hand, they don't attack physically, they attack from a social aspect.
Sure.
There's a pecking order.
Yeah.
There's more social pressures with women. How do I look towards the group? Do I fit in towards the group?
Yeah.
And this is why there's a correlation Jonathan shows between depression, suicide, just overall detrimental emotional health. And he in fact he recommends that both boys and girls should not have any, not the internet, but social media we're talking about, like Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, or whatever they're doing, TikTok. 14, 15. Like no social media until that age. That's how detrimental it is to the psyche.
I like that.
Right? So context. All matters context. But let's say you and I, you know, we're in our 30s or whatever, 34, 35. I would love to have an app that has a list of the cognitive biases, and we create a ML in there, a machine learning algo, where based on our behavior on social media, it gives you like a warning, like, hey, UJ, we've noticed that you've liked X, Y, and Z posts. These posts, you know, it comes from these types of sources, the same type of thinking, and kind of patterns your behavior. Because when you're using social media right now, it is programmed. It's a feedback mechanism. Certain posts that you like gives that data information to the AI or machine learning algo. That algo therefore refeeds it back, also depending on what type of ads are happening, etc. And that's why people live in echo chambers, right? You have people who are hardcore, like say conservatives. All they see is conservative news and conservative data. Same thing with liberals, etc.
So filter bubble.
Yeah, so it's these fucking vacuum echo chambers where nobody's cross-pollinating. This is why you create polarity.
Exactly, and that's why the landscape, political and otherwise, is that polarized.
Correct.
Because you have most of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc., Instagram, right, where they continue, their goal is to get your eyeballs.
Of course.
Right, and maximize the time your eyeballs are focused on them. And so to be able to do that, they're feeding you more information that they know from their machine learning algos that you're going to like and you're going to engage with. This is a huge problem because that's not how the world has worked for most all of human history till just a few years ago. So when that happens, now there is constant confirmation of the way you think and the way you believe and the way you are and all this other stuff. And then you go out in the world and you see people who aren't like that. And and then you dehumanize them.
Correct.
And dehumanization is the foundation of conflict. Is the foundation of when shit goes bad, pretty much, right? When you dehumanize someone or something, you're okay with them being treated differently. You're okay with them like being deported out of countries. You're okay with them like killing them even, right? In extreme situations. So this is it's challenging. It's a challenging world, and it's a challenging thing to actually like deal with. And it's almost like it would be valuable to have tools, apps, etc., that allow you to see into different echo chambers, different filter bubbles, so you can balance your own perspective. This is a real challenge. And also, like, speaking of phones, let's go there for a second. Man, holy shit, they suck. I even see, like, most of my friends and my general circle tend to be like, pretty high in awareness.
Yes.
And I still see the pull that the phones have on them, right? The addictive nature of the dopamine burst, the checking your phone too much when you're having a conversation, the pull, and the way the information that's coming at them, they don't question. There's a lack of analytical thinking around the information that is being presented. Like both Instagram and Facebook, more Instagram has this ability to make you think things about someone by adding the context. You don't know the context around what's going on behind their life. You don't. But because of the medium, your brain fills in the context without telling you. And so it's easy to portray who you are while actually not being that. And so a lot of what it's doing is preventing real, raw conversation and communication from actually happening.
Well, I think we're becoming more disconnected than ever.
For sure. The level of consciousness, the general humanity, is starting to dip at a rate that is quite concerning. And the only thing we can do, back to like what I was saying, is keep the phones away as much as possible. Not just from kids, from yourself.
You know that Warren Buffett only has a $20 flip phone.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. That's cool.
So what does he know that other people don't know?
Well, he also lives a fairly simple life. There's a great documentary on him, Becoming Warren Buffett.
Simplicity is key, man.
Yeah.
People live complicated lives.
Yeah. Let's talk about Becoming Warren Buffett, actually. I'm kind of curious to hear your perspective on it. You remember that?
On Becoming Warren Buffett?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the documentary overall?
Yeah, like, I think it's okay.
Okay.
It's not like groundbreaking or anything.
Yeah.
I know, I'm more interested in Charlie Munger than Warren Buffett.
Yeah, same.
From like how he dives into psychology and understanding human behavior.
Yeah, I think
like one of the things, like, he started diving in long time ago when Robert Cialdini came out with his research.
Yeah, influence.
And he actually gave out books to everybody. His persuasion book.
Yeah.
That's kind of a gift to everybody. Yeah. And so I'm interested how they think. Like, for me, it's like people are infatuated for him because he made money. That's it.
I agree. So
I mean, that's the only reason, right?
There's two things, right? So you look at the Bill Gates documentary,
Yeah.
You look at the Warren Buffett documentary. Interesting. So obviously, both people's fascination, including mine, to a decent extent, comes from the fact that they amassed significant wealth. But my real interest actually comes from how are they living their life now? Because they have so much money that they can choose to live their life in whatever way they want. And more importantly, how do they choose to spend their time? That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't ever have to make money again. They don't ever have to do anything they want. But how are they truly choosing to spend their time? And how is that improving their quality of their being? What is the rate?
The funny thing, though, in Bill Gates' documentary, you find out that if it wasn't for Melinda Gates, Gates would never be friends with Warren Buffett.
Exactly. That's cool. That's cool.
Pretty cool.
That's cool. There's also like the relationship between Melinda and Bill was also really cool. It was really well depicted in the documentary. I thought it was that at least in Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're true partners. And that's an interesting and valuable insight that I had. But what was interesting and surprising for me from Warren's perspective is like He doesn't spend much time on his physical movement or activity.
No.
That's mind-blowing. Because the research on that is very compelling. Like, if you, moving your body fundamentally will make you better. There's not too much focus on health.
Or he has Coca-Cola every day and
McDonald's in the morning.
Fries or something, yeah.
I think it was McDonald's in the morning, right? Like, I was like, huh? What? It makes no sense. Also, they didn't talk very much about his engagement with friends or community very much.
Mm-hmm.
I found that interesting. Bill is different in that way. You can see he has a lot more. He's an ecosystem. He's got a lot more friends. He's got a lot more communities, and he's a lot more active in philanthropy. Well, Buffett not so much. Buffett just like drops his cash into Bill and Melinda's foundation. Right?
Well, he even said himself, he's like, he can deploy it better than I can.
Exactly. Right. So that's interesting to me. So I feel almost like Bill's making better decisions in terms of, again, with my limited understanding,
sure,
how he's deploying his time and his capital.
It's context too, right?
Exactly.
Warren's older than Bill,
yes.
much older than Bill,
yes.
Right? Depending on context of how you were raised, when you were growing up, what state you were, how the politics, family structure. It's all context. Everyone had, it's hard to compare two people.
But there are some similarities. The
totally. Yeah,
is a very consistent.
The ferocious readers.
Exactly. The reading is a very consistent similarity. The play and like the seeking of the things that bring them joy is also a consistent similarity. So if you look at similarities, I take them as principles, and then I ask myself, like, back to journaling. I'll just like put a question at the top of my journal, like, how do I sequence and how do I inject more play into my life?
Mm-hmm.
Bam. And so I started to go and started to think, and I start to get a list, and then I deploy that list into my schedule. Done. Right. That's a simple example of how to take an insight and turn it into something that fundamentally changes you on a week-to-week basis. So Munger is more interesting for sure. There's one book that has like pretty much all of Munger that you will ever want. It's called Poor Charlie's Almanac. It's a large blue book, and for some reason it's always like on back order on Amazon. But if you're in the States, it's much easier to get. And that has all his speeches, it's got interviews with close friends, family, etc. And talks a lot about his life and how he lived it, and how he has used models of thinking to apply mostly to investing. He hasn't applied very much to his life, which Buffett talks about actually. He's like, he applies it in finance, but not very much to his life. I'm like, interesting. That's good to know, because I like to apply things comprehensively across all buckets. Because like, why not? If you can take a concept and you can apply something like sunk cost fallacy to like your relationships and your finance and your friendships and your business, like, just apply it to everything. Why not? You're already applying it to one area, but I guess this is not a common thing. So learning how to do that, learning how to think for yourself, learning how to find what is your true nature. So this is actually something that I really care about, and I find is really not taught or shared, especially in this traditional schooling system, which is like, man, when you were a kid, right, there is a style and a nature to you that is very true to yourself.
Sure.
Right. And nobody else really has that. It's very your style, right? Where if you were nurtured and if you were cared for and you were taught in a way that opens you up to your own nature, right? You're naturally a direct guy. You're an aggressive guy. You're kind of like a machine gun. When it comes to like focus on one thing, you'll just keep going, and when you're done, you're done. You're out of bullets.
Yeah,
see you later. On the next target, right?
So
we've known each other well, so I know kind of what your nature is and how you operate. But if you had a teacher, that saw you for who you were, and kind of guided you, like a wise man, let's say, much older, right? Who could guide you and say, hey, like that's kind of, it seems like that's what your nature is. So let's move you in that direction. Let's give you something that you naturally gravitate towards. Let's nurture you and your style in a way that you're able to fully develop what that is, instead of put you in this stupid cookie cutter model where you're learning about like biology one day and math another day and all this other stuff. Let's focus on how you learn. Let's develop that. That's something I really truly believe is how mastery is experienced, right? So you're very unique in your own ways. You're a voracious reader also, right? You're also like love to question things. You have a natural kind of anti-establishment mindset, which is pretty awesome, right? It's an unconventional mindset. You have a traditional distrust for authority, which is what allows you to question, allows you to think for yourself. If we were all kind of allowed to develop in our own nature and think for ourselves, we would develop into the people that make us fully alive and expressed. And for me, like self-expression, the extent of self-expression and life satisfaction, like they're on the same plane. So the more fully expressed you are in your true nature, the more deeply fulfilled you can be. And that's something I strive for. And thinking is a big part of it. Like thinking I consider is art. Writing is art. And thinking, it's kind of my art. How do you think better? How do you, I really love great thinking because it feels beautiful. It feels simple. It feels like elevates my being in a certain sense.
Okay, so let's kind of simplify things. You know, we look at, for example, Ray Dalio, principles.
Yeah. Great investor. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of the best out there with Bridgewater. And
talks a lot about meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Big on that.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
Also, he's a huge fan of Joseph Campbell, too.
Yes.
When we look at principles, and Elon is, you know, one of the best as well when it comes to first principles.
Sure.
And we use that as our thesis to approaching new things. What are things people can do today based on first principles to maybe understand themselves a little bit better?
This is a fucking great question. So before we even ask that question, let's go even deeper. Let's understand, how do you think in first principles? Because this is a question that doesn't get asked.
Yes.
We are never taught how to think in first principles. How do you think effectively? I see a lot of people trying to solve problems, but they're thinking about it wrong. And it's kind of like, if you have a faulty windshield, how are you going to drive properly? You need to clean that shit up before you can even actually learn how to drive. So the first step is to understand what it feels like to come to terms and read first principle thinking. What does it feel like to read a book like Ray Dalio? How do you tell truth from fiction? How do you tell something that's fundamentally strong and based on something real? In physics, the first principle is, the term comes from some science, from physics, where all of science is built on a bedrock of first principles, things you cannot falsify, like the speed of light. Right? It is a first principle. It's a foundational to a lot of the physics formulas that are derived slowly over time. Right? All of physics and science is derived directly from these fundamental principles.
Yeah, if that theory of speed of light breaks apart, all of physics breaks apart.
Exactly, right? And so, in the same way, recognizing, being able to, like, the first step is to learn for every human to recognize in themselves, how do you know what a first principle is? How can you tell apart a first principle from a second order or a third order principle? That's important. And to do that, it's important to surround yourself with thinkers like Elon and Ray that frequently think from that standpoint, from that basis. So you have a taste. It's kind of like you're able to taste good thinking. Because if most people have been living with shitty thinking all their life, you can't taste it. And you don't even know what you're missing out on. And so learning to surround yourself with good thinking and slowly understanding, okay, this makes sense. You start with that. You start there. Then you start to question some of the ways that you're thinking. Because thinking is essentially software, right? It's a fancy way. Like we are a carbon-based life form. right? So most computers are silicon-based machines. But let's say if we had silicon-based software, we'd be able to update our thinking a lot faster. Sadly, don't. So we have carbon-based, which is going to take a lot longer to iterate. Journaling is a very good way of updating your software, updating your thinking, updating your decision making, analyzing what are the things you did, what are the things you will do, what was the thinking behind your decisions that were faulty, right? Where was the fault in logic? Very similar to how you would debug a program. You just look at, you got an output you didn't want. Okay, what happened? And it's not a thing where you necessarily need to take it personally. Your code, it's not moving the way you want it to. So how do we figure this out in a way that makes sense? When you put pen to paper, you recognize it. Cognition means to understand, to think, to process. You process the thinking, again, recognize, right? You recognize your thoughts on paper, and that changes and updates your thinking in almost real time, right? So an idea becomes real for the first time when you put it on paper, because it goes from like an intangible thought to a tangible word on a page. And as you start to do that, your processing becomes better. Your processing becomes better, and you're exposed to good thinking. You cannot but help update the person you are to the thinking that you're surrounding yourself with. And that's a very effective way of being able to upgrade your own personality and your thinking, and therefore your actions and your results in life. So it's hard to fuck up when you're exposing yourself to really great thinking that you know for sure is fundamentally strong. And then slowly you start to apply it in your own life, just like anything else. It's a process of osmosis.
Okay. So let's say people, maybe whether they read Dalio's book or they dive in deep into first principle thinking.
Oh, by the way, there's a really good blog post by Tim Urban on the blog
Wait by Why. Yeah.
It's called The Chef, the Cook, and the Chef.
The Chef, the Cook, the Chef.
No, sorry. The Cook and the Chef.
Cook and the Chef.
Wait but Why. If you just Google this, it'll lead you to a long article. All of Wait but Why's articles are usually long, but they're very worth it. And he talks about how Elon Musk thinks, and he describes first principle thinking eloquently and beautifully with cartoons and shit. It's really funny. So really,
what's something people can do once let's say they read that?
Okay.
What's something they can do afterwards, pen to paper? Are there questions they can ask themselves?
Yeah. So what I would do is I would read Principles by Ray Dalio. I would read section 1. Like there is a part about principles, life principles. Read that section. And then very similar to what I did with the Seeking Wisdom book, which is go principle by principle and put pen to paper and ask yourself, how does this apply in my life? That's it. Understand a principle deeply, and then put pen to paper. Ask yourself, how does this principle apply in my life? How can I apply it more effectively? If you do that for that section, I will tell you your thinking is going to really significantly improve. And that's it. It's as easy and as hard as that. And I'm guaranteeing you less than 5% of the people listening will do that. It's hard work. It's hard thinking work. But if your thinking isn't in line, then your life is going to suffer because the results cannot be as precise as your thinking is.
Is there any advice you have or you've seen in experience for follow through?
To actually do the thing? Well, what is follow? What do you mean?
Like, for example, let's say you start this process and you go one by one based on first principle thinking, and you apply that to certain elements in your life and you write about it. Is there any mechanisms or systems in place that can give you a greater chance of success?
Yes.
To follow through on that?
Great question. So the one I did that I shared is accountability. That's a really great one. Just find someone else who's just as hungry as you are, or if not more hungry, which is ideal. and work with them and say, hey, I want to do this. Do you want to do this too? We can help each other out. We can give each other feedback on each other's kind of thought processes, and we could make it kind of like a co-evolution experience. That's fun. That's a lot of fun because you get to go with someone. Doing anything with someone else who's also going the same place, it's just a lot of fun. What's the downside? It's kind of like having a gym buddy for your mind. Right? So that for sure. Get accountability. Find someone who is also interested in developing themselves in this way. That's like probably my best tip. The second best tip is if you're doing that, put some money on the line, whatever is meaningful to you. It could be like $50, it could be $100, it could be $1,000, like whatever is meaningful, and it will hurt if you lose it. Like that is your target, that is your mark of, okay, I want to do this, and that's it. And then that's pretty much like, if you have the right accountability, if you have the right stakes, and if you have the right rhythm, maybe just one principle a week. Don't overdo it. It'll take you maybe an hour or two. That's good. And just constantly surround yourself with good thinking and people that are getting the results you want. That's a really important one, right? So you look at Dalio, and he constantly talks about transcendental meditation and how valuable it's been for him and how consistent he is with his practice. That's remarkable to me. That's cool. Like I'm interested in a sliver of his results, but his thinking is just beautiful. He's got these beautiful videos on YouTube, right? How the economic machine works.
Yeah, the macro, micro, yeah.
Exactly. Like a nice 30-minute video that he produced that is like out of his wisdom. It's beautiful. It's very simple, but accurate. There's another video series he produced around his book, Principles, right? It's just like an animation. There are examples of how the principles work in action. And if you just constantly surround yourself with excellent thinking and people that are getting the results that you want, and making sure that you actually want those results. A lot of people want a house and a car, but really they don't want that. Right? They've been brainwashed by society and peers and advertisements and Instagram and things like that to want that. It's just the first layer. But if you put a pen to paper and you ask, what do I really, really, really want? I'll give you an example of what it looks like to get what you really want. You're familiar with Anderson Silva, obviously.
Fighter?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right. Extraordinary fighter, first of all. There's a documentary made on him, also really good. But the parts that I was most impressed with him is actually after he wins the title. He's like a 6+ foot Brazilian man with a lot of pride, right? He like gets on his knees and he starts sobbing when he wins the title. Every time. That's a man who's got what he wants. It's a powerful emotional experience, man, to like really get what you want. And we all are capable of that emotion. We all are capable of feeling powerfully vindicated by life for having pursued what you truly want to pursue. But even knowing what that is takes digging, because you got to get through the house and the car and all this nonsense that's been programmed at you from birth, pretty much, right? From your parents, from your peers, from Instagram, all this bullshit. You have to get through this gunk down to the things that really matter to you. And that is a process that can only be done alone, with yourself, with your mind, with your body, with your heart, with your being. Right? Other people can ask you questions, but the true work is to be done alone, in introspection. You can get a therapist, you can get a coach, you can do all of these things, but fundamentally the work is yours.
This is why you're a huge proponent of meditation.
Exactly. Because meditation allows you to get in touch with your being, with who you are. Like allow the thoughts and all the mental chatter to like subside so you can sit down with who the fuck you are.
You do 2 sessions a day.
Yeah, 1 to 2 sessions a day.
Yeah.
My average is about 1, but I aim for about 2. Yeah.
And what's like an easy starter pack for people to get into meditation?
Headspace, man.
Headspace.
The
app.
Yeah. I'm not like I've been meditating for a long time, but for all the people that I've actually seen make some progress, Headspace is actually pretty good. I've seen some people get on and off Muse,
Mm.
but Headspace actually is more standard. I think the way to approach it is to say, a lot of people say, "Oh, I tried meditation once, didn't work for me." That's like saying I tried exercise once, it didn't work for me. It's basically the same thing.
I view meditation as exercise of
Exactly.
mind. Yeah.
But you can do a lot of things. You can run, you can lift,
Yes.
you can swim, you can play hockey. Like
Hence, many forms of meditation.
exactly, right? So when someone wants to get into meditation, a big thing I say is, hey, this is like saying I'm interested in mind exercise, but you don't know which form of exercise you kind of like yet. So don't give up after trying one or two. There are many ranges of meditations. There's TM, there's Headspace, there's like meditation studios popping up all over the city these days. There's all kinds of, there's Vipassana, there's Insight, there's a lot, there's like different yogic meditations, Kundalini, all kinds of stuff, right? Figure it out. Like figure out what works for your disposition, for your personality. But dismissing like meditation based on like a few sessions isn't really sustainable. It's not a good, it's like going to the gym a couple of times and saying, it didn't work for me, I got sore muscles, right? It's a process you commit to. And if you're doing it, there's actually mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, which is like I think of a 12-week guided program. So where you go in every week and you're instructed and you have sessions at home that you're supposed to go back and do. And over a 12-week period, it almost kind of helps you build a habit. And it's supposed to be a program that's like runs pretty much most cities, most major cities in the world. And if someone truly wants to build a habit, it's a pretty solid way to get started as well.
That's the thing. Most people, like same thing with the gym. People try to go in like an hour a day. That's might be too much of a mental hurdle at the beginning to build that neural pathway as a habit. It's like, for example, I use on a daily basis. I use calm.com.
Right. Yeah. Calm, Headspace, similar.
15 minutes. I have like a 15-minute little session.
Absolutely.
Find a quiet spot, turn it on, and go at it.
And the best part is like a minute is better than 0.
Yes.
5 is better than 1.
Yes.
Right? Like 1 is definitely better than 0. 1 is like exponentially better than 0 because you were applying effort into it. And so 0 is your enemy. Right? 0 is your enemy.
There should be a whole brand around that. All right, UJ, put that in the journal. 0 is your enemy. We'll start that tomorrow.
Good stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, meditation's, the benefits for it's just exponential. There's like no downside to it.
Yeah. And especially if you combine that with good thinking, journaling, movement, surrounding yourself with great inspiration, surrounding yourself with excellent humans that are similar in a value set and are working on themselves in a similar way. Like this is enjoyable, right? This is an enjoyable life. This is a life worth living because, again, back to the Buffett and Gates, I think they're great almost memes or ideas for like, even people with significant resources aren't working on themselves the way I would imagine they would be working on themselves. That's really interesting. Okay. So this whole industry of improving yourself and the drive to improve yourself is not a super common thing. Fascinating. It's a market.
Yeah, there's a market.
No.
I think also people try to build Rome overnight. They got to focus on one thing.
No.
Same thing when you go to the gym.
No.
If you I always tell people you don't have to go to gym. Like if you can do like 20 push-ups a day, there's your start.
Exactly.
Walk 20 minutes. I don't know, something.
Yeah,
what's the most minimal viable thing you can put in?
Exactly.
So same thing when it goes to like improving yourself. They try to do everything all at once. Same thing with health, right? It's like, I'm going to clean diet, then go to the gym and do something. I look at the people like, no, it's not going to work.
No, again, they don't understand the first principles of habit change.
Work.
Right? They don't understand the first principles of habit change.
Yeah.
Right? There is a setup cost. There's a significant setup cost to any new habit or behavior that you're going to inject into your life. And trying 2 or 3 things at the same time is not going to be effective because it's not going to stack. Right? It's like lifting 5 bricks when you can only lift 2.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get exhausted. You're going to get dejected and you're going to fail. You're not going to know why you failed.
Correct.
And you're going to give up because now you don't have an actual rudder an understanding of how to move forward in a way that makes sense. Of course. And this happens over and over and over again. So, there's a market. Yeah. It's interesting, man.
I'm excited for like a combination with psychedelics and
Sure.
mind improvement.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole new world, too. Right. See, so the cool thing about psychedelics is you add fuel to all this fire that already exists. Right. You have the meditation, you have the movement, you have the journaling, you have the really smart people that we have access to. And then you add psychedelics to that. You get some magic right there because you already have a strong base. The fundamentals are strong.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to interface with life in a way that allows you to learn and grow on a daily and weekly basis is significant. Right? Your ability to navigate life is strong. And then you have things like psychedelics that allow you to inject awareness into your life at a rate that was previously not possible. What they do is they improve the rate at which you can inject consciousness into yourself. That's powerful, because through all of these habits and through connections with good therapists, good coaches, etc., you can stabilize the consciousness, right? You can inject this consciousness into yourself, metaphorically, obviously, and then you can start to allow that consciousness to settle into your day-to-day life. So you can bring that love and that care and that attention and that drive to your work, to your friends, to your family, to your relationships. That's a powerful thing, because to me, I think psychedelics obviously are in the last year or two become quite popular. And I see the indiscriminate use of this shit a lot, man. It's annoying and it's concerning, because these are powerful things that cannot be used indiscriminately.
Hopefully we'll see in the next couple of years legalization of released mushrooms.
Exactly.
Psilocybin.
Exactly. That'd be nice. But something that gets often not talked about is the integration piece.
Correct.
All right. And the integration is super important to life. Forget psychedelics for a second. Like, what is an integration skill set? The integration skill set basically is the ability to learn something, like get an insight, and to be able to apply it in life such that you've learned from it. So let's say you get into an automobile accident because you ran a red light. Okay. A very basic example of integration is learn what happened there. Were you drinking? Were you driving? What caused you to move past the red light? Did you not look both ways? Did you not clearly realize there was a red light there? What happened? And the ability to apply that. Okay, I didn't look, or maybe I was drinking. Maybe whatever the person has done, the person starts to apply. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this in the future. Basically, that skill set amplified and refined is what you need. So let's say every conversation you have is a conversation that you can learn about yourself, the other person, and slowly, even just a slight layer of refinement to the next time you interact with them or the next time you interact with someone else. It is a growth mindset. It is the ability to pull information from the outside and allow yourself to refine every interaction, every iteration of what you're doing. Taking that to psychedelics can be powerful, because now you have such a strong influx of consciousness. You're like, wow, this is cool. You learn a shit ton about yourself and the universe at large. And then you write that down. And then you go, okay, how does this change my life? And then you start to list it all out. And you start to list it of the actions that you need to take as a result of this experience. Bam. And that fundamentally changes you in a way you would never have been able to change yourself, because this access is a powerful thing. So that's what I'm excited for. Obviously, the economy and that side of things is also quite interesting. The investing around some of these startups is interesting. The ecosystem in Canada is really cool, man. It's growing because we have a few friends in the industry as well. And it's great to see the work they do.
Yeah, I'm excited. My hopes is legalization. Well, my hopes is all drugs are legalized.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Controlled, but legalized.
It's safer.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah. Because I would not want them over the counter, man.
Well, listen, even over the counter stuff like Advil and aspirin is dangerous.
Absolutely.
Overuse.
Absolutely.
My general philosophy is eliminate the black market, legalize all drugs, make sure if people want it, they have the most purest, cleanest form. And another form, even though I'm against taxes, another form of tax revenue for the government.
That's fair.
You can look at Portugal. Portugal decriminalized most drugs, and their statistics are good for people, less time in jail, less addicts, and also a better educational curve as well. It's just safer. Like, you're not going to stop people from doing what they want to do.
Exactly.
Give them the best and safest option as possible.
And you eliminate the black market, which is huge for a lot of reasons. Also, you eliminate the impurities and just the lack of great material that people have access to, because that causes a lot of debts and ODs and this and
it's
that.
Still nonsense. Off tangent, it still befuddles me that prostitution is illegal.
I didn't know this.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially when you take into the statistics of sex trafficking,
abduction.
Oh man. And you're telling me you're not legalizing it? Legalize it. No, streamline it. Fucking remove. Like, I think people really underestimate how fucked up, like how bad, like the numbers of sex trafficking there is. It's like no joke. It's obscene. And one of the biggest markets for that is the illegal black market of prostitution.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff in the world that befuddles me, man. A lot of stuff. This is the world we live in. And
well, that's why we change it day by day.
Exactly. You learn to embrace it. You learn to see what you can change.
We'll end this podcast, which how we started the podcast is I can't change the world, but I can change myself.
Exactly. Yeah, one person at a time.
Yeah.
It's the best we can do.
Yeah, man. So, we've covered a lot.
We have.
Thank you for sharing all this.
A pleasure, man.
Guys, make sure you don't just passively listen to this. Just like any good podcast or Audible or book, re-listen to parts that resonate with you. I'm a firm believer in any medium of knowledge that you take in, you view it as any relationship. It's not just transactional, it's multifactorial. One book that I always recommend people to pick up is How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler. Meta-analysis or meta-reading. In today's time, meta-reading isn't just reading, is absorbing information through podcasting like this or through YouTube. And so people assume they have to sit through A to Z. They don't. Find a section that you like and don't just listen to it. Like if you enjoyed what UJ was talking about, first principles or meditation, take that section out and actually make a checklist for yourself. What are action steps from here? Okay, I'm going to go read Ray Dalio's First Principle or read How to Think Clearly by Rolf or etc. and actually make a roadmap of actionable steps that you can take after this. I think, we touched on this. It's seldom that people do follow-up process. In one ear, out the other ear. So less is more. That's all I'm saying. Less is more.
Yeah, I also recommend just pulling out a journal and a pen and paper and just like asking yourself the questions that matter.
Yes.
Right? Start with how am I feeling right now and why, and then start to write about the thing that is on your mind. We're all dealing with something, right? We all are, and put it on paper.
Yes.
And ask yourself the questions. What's going on? What do I know for a fact? What am I struggling with? How do I move through that? And what do you learn from this podcast, right? And put it all down, because if you do, the chances of your follow through are going to be higher. Because it's hard to sit down with something, write something, have it stare you in the face, not do too much about it.
UJ, it's always a pleasure when you come on.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. If people are looking to find more information about you, what's the best resource?
The best way is find me on Instagram.
Okay.
Find me on my website. Subscribe.
What's the Instagram handle?
UJ Ramdas.
Okay. Twitter or anything? Facebook, Twitter, or just Instagram?
Just Insta.
Okay. Yeah. UJ Ramdas on Instagram. And guys, if you're listening to this on iTunes or Google or wherever else, please make sure to leave a review. Those always help. And if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment below. I check all the comments on a daily basis. Like, share, and don't forget, subscribe. Till then, guys, this was another episode of Ameer Approved, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.